This is Bloomberg Businessweek Daily, reporting from the magazine that helps global leaders stay ahead, with insight on the people, companies, and trends shaping today's complex economy, plus global business, finance, and tech news as it happens. Bloomberg Businessweek Daily with Carol Massar and Tim Stenovec, live on Bloomberg Radio, television, YouTube, and Bloomberg Originals.
And a very good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to Bloomberg Businessweek Daily. Carol Massar, Tim Stenovec, live here on Bloomberg Radio, Bloomberg TV, well, across the platforms. I just said that because I was looking at some headlines. Mike McKee, what did we just get?
The federal judge in Boston has ruled that the administration has to use the contingency funds, the emergency funds, to fund SNAP. They can't just let it die, which sets up a very interesting situation because the administration's argument was it wasn't legal. So if the judge says that it's legal, then we have to see if the administration appeals it, because the only reason they would appeal it would be to make people starve. So
you're listening to Michael McKee, international economics and policy correspondent for Bloomberg Television and Radio.
People know his dulcet tones.
They do, but 42 million Americans could see their food assistance cut off within days. Are they safe now because of what this judge said?
If the administration does what the judge says they're to do, they're safe for some time. It will take them a few days. There will be an interregnum of a few days because it takes a while for the money to get into the accounts at the states. But then I guess the emergency fund has $5 billion in it. It takes $8 billion to get through a month. So they get through 3/4 of the month maybe, and hopefully the government is open by then.
Yeah, as we tick, keep building on this government shutdown. Mike's going to be with us. We're going to talk more about kind of the Fed speak that we've seen in a week where it's been busy, but we did get a Fed decision just on Wednesday. Mike's going to be back in just a moment. Folks, in the meantime, we have seen quite a rally in the month of October. We are seeing some of the big Mag 7, well, mostly a name like Amazon really moving still ahead on this Friday, but we are going to wrap up the month of October here.
Yeah, right now, as the month stands, 2.2%. I'm going to round that up, Carol. For the S&P 500 advancing this month. The NASDAQ, though, up 4.6% this month. We do have just about 2 hours to go, but who's counting until the end of the trading month? But things are looking good if you're long these stocks.
Yeah, I mean, look at the S&P 500, folks. It has soared almost 40% since that meltdown back in April when the president started to talk about tariffs, high tariffs for many of its trading partners. It is now on pace for its longest streak of monthly gains since 2021. All right, this hour, what we decided on our planning call this morning is we wanted to kind of look at the week that was, with news still coming at us on this Friday as we continue to monitor President Trump, who is on his way or landing in Florida as we speak. But as we think about the week that was, today, we've got a question. Is the U.S. headed for some kind of ramped up military conflict with Venezuela? That is definitely on our minds.
Yeah, we saw that affect the oil trade earlier in the day today. Also, the big themes of the week, of course, big tech earnings, Amazon surging. There's more speculation around Netflix's interest in Warner Brothers. We're going to talk about that and more with Needham's Laura Martin.
And then we're going to talk a bit more about the government shutdown and then tariffs, critical minerals. There was so much coming at us, certainly when it comes to U.S. politics and U.S. interaction with the world at large. But first up, let's get a check on the trade on this Friday. Let's turn things over to Charlie Pellet.
All right, thank you very much. Happy Friday. Happy Halloween to the two of you. We got the Dow lower, the S&P, NASDAQ, both advancing right now. NASDAQ 100 index up 0.4%. The stock rally waning after a $17 trillion historic run. S&P 500 index helping us keep it all in context, up 15 now, up by about 0.2%. The Dow down 28, drop there of just under 0.1%. Mixed market, we do have the Russell 2000 index of small cap shares just about flat on the day, little changed, up under 0.1%. The Mag 7 index up 1.3%. Apple, a member of that index, big time, up 0.1%. Amazon, also a member, up by 10.7%. Year 10-year at 4.09%, with a 2-year currently yielding 3.60%. Gold now slumping $26 the ounce, just below $4,039.98, down 0.6%. And West Texas Intermediate crude up 0.6%, $60.94 for a barrel of WTI. Amazon posted robust cloud growth that reassured investors that the tens of billions of dollars that the company and its peers are pouring into AI will pay off. Amazon again up 10.7%. And Apple is projecting a jump in sales over the holiday season after releasing new iPhones and work to reassure investors concerned about a decline in revenue from China. Apple again up by 0.1%. S&P higher by 0.2%. And for on-demand news 24 hours a day, subscribe to Bloomberg News Now wherever you get your podcast. I'm Charlie Pellet. That is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
All right, Charlie, thank you so much. Carol Massar along with Tim Stenovec live here at Bloomberg headquarters in New York City. So it's Friday, almost hard to remember that we got a Fed decision this week, but we certainly did. And this is what we're seeing now is a lot of Fed speakers coming out. Fed Bank of Dallas President Lori Logan said she did not support the U.S. Central Bank's decision to cut interest rates this week and will likely find it appropriate to hold rates steady at the next meeting because, Tim, inflation remains too high in her view.
Logan doesn't vote on monetary policy this year. She participates in the FOMC discussion. She will rotate onto the voting panel. That will happen starting next year. In the meantime, the Fed dated overnight index swap, a type of derivative contract used to manage interest rate risk, has trimmed the odds of a December rate cut to about 50%. With more on the U.S. economy and Fed policy, and here to help us wrap up the week, you've already heard from him today many times, Bloomberg TV and radio international economics and policy correspondent Michael McKee. He joins us here in the studio.
We were going to start with Fed Speak, but I want to ask you about that headline that just crossed about SNAP benefits. I mean, what is it? I think all of us, I put something out on X. I mean, when more than 40 million Americans are getting food assistance in what is supposed to be one of the richest or the richest country in the world, what does that mean about our economy? What does that tell you about our economy?
Well, that's kind of a political question. Obviously, economically, it doesn't suggest that we're allocating our resources in the best way. This is SNAP's been a big political football in Washington, and it's even more so now because it's in the middle of this government shutdown argument. But the Republicans have said that along with Medicaid, they want people who get these benefits, they should work. But 98% of them or 96% of them, I think, are children in school or caregivers or retired people. So that doesn't that doesn't really work either. So it's kind of it comes down to what kind of country do you want to have, and how do you believe that you get there? Because there's certainly an argument that Republicans make that people should make their own way, or that this should be handled privately by charities and things like that.
Well, that's what I wanted to talk about, Mike, is who picks up the slack in a situation like this. I have family all over the country, and we have, like many families out there, group texts where we're talking about everything. And my mom and my sister brought up something interesting, and it's the idea that on Halloween, people are thinking about making available foodstuffs, like shelf-stable things that they can give away to people who might experience hardship if they are losing SNAP benefits. They're talking about schools in different parts of the country, and these are local issues, but it's also a national issue. Having parents step in to help other students who would traditionally get SNAP assistance, and instead the parents at the school, or even people who don't even go to the school, are bringing food to the schools. It seems like people are stepping in.
Yeah, it's been kind of a nationwide thing, and a number of states are saying they will do their best to cover as much as they can. The administration has said those states will not be reimbursed, and of course they don't have the money to fund the entire program. All this SNAP money is federal money, so they've got to take it from somewhere else, and they won't have enough for a whole month. But there is certainly a rising effort to take care of it.
We're going to get to the Fed, I promise, in a second. But this conversation really has me thinking about the way that a government dollar that goes out has this multiplier effect when it is spent by somebody buying something. Do we have any research on that? Do you have anything on the top of your head, Mike, about a SNAP benefit and to what extent that ripples through the economy? And the absence of that would actually cause some sort of pullback.
Well, it would. Just basic economics. If the dollar's not spent, it doesn't cycle through the economy. I don't have any specific numbers on SNAP itself, but again, it's $8 billion a month, roughly. So that's money that does, comes from the taxpayers at one place or another, or comes from selling bonds to Wall Street, probably. And then that money goes through the economy, goes to the store, and the store then, pays its suppliers who pay its workers, and et cetera.
I'm going to call an audible. We were going to talk to Nathan Dean after we were done with Mike, but because we're talking about SNAP and Americans and food benefits and the government shutdown, we do want to bring in Bloomberg Intelligence Senior Policy Analyst Nathan Dean into the conversation. Then, Mike, we're going to come back to you on the Fed. But Nathan, I'm assuming you're listening to us. I mean, Mike mentioned SNAP benefits are, I guess, a political football, if you will. What are your thoughts about this against this government this government shutdown, that it is impacting workers, it's impacting Americans?
I mean, absolutely. I mean, this was one of the key pressure points of which would potentially bring Congress together on a deal. And obviously that didn't occur. But I will say is that there's open ideas, call them chit chats, as we go into next week among some of certain Democratic senators about this idea of reopening the government. Now, today's ruling most likely takes away a little bit of that pressure if the administration falls through and actually pays the benefits here. But from an investment point of view, I just point out here is that it's really Walmart, Kroger, and Albertsons are the three equities that you should be looking at in terms of SNAP benefits. Walmart takes in about 25% of SNAP. Kroger and Albertsons around 8 to 6%. So if this were to go into November, and I don't think it will, but if this were to go into late November, into December, those three equities in particular would be harmed by this decision, or by the idea of not paying out SNAP benefits.
Is it the type of thing, Nathan, that could actually end a government shutdown? I mean, if we think back to the first Trump administration, it was potential issues or actual issues at airports and air traffic controllers that put a lot of pressure on the administration to sign a CR. But would it be something like this, and we could hear Republicans potentially hearing from their constituents about benefits running out?
Absolutely. I mean, look, the government shutdown is going to end when the American populace tells Congress to get it done. And right now, the polling data doesn't suggest that. If you're a Democrat, you're looking at the data and you're seeing that independents blame Republicans slightly more than Democrats, and you're saying, yep, we're good. If you're Republicans, you're looking at the same data and you see 85% of your caucus supporting your strategy, you say, yep, you're good. But as we get into November, additional unintended consequences, and ideally the SNAP benefit is a perfect example of this, where real Americans are going to go to their policymakers and say, enough is enough, get this done. Now, the way that I think this will end is that you will see an agreement, most likely coming from a group of bipartisan senators, not leadership, but bipartisan senators who then go to leadership and say, here's what the agreement looks like, most likely keep opening up the government, a vote on these ACA premium subsidies, not a deal to pass them, but just a vote. And then they'll go to leadership and say, this is what it's done, and this is what we want to do. Now, if we don't get that next week, the next major catalyst is going to be Thanksgiving travel. And that is something that policymakers are definitely taking into account, because no American wants to go traveling for Thanksgiving and then have a ground stop at Newark and be stuck there for 5 hours.
Yeah. Me included. Anybody
Even though you're from New Jersey, you still don't want that.
I don't want anybody stuck at the airport. Okay. Mike, you're getting more details.
We have a few more details now on these court rulings. The first case had been filed in Boston, and that judge ruled, and we talked about that. A second judge in Rhode Island has now joined in this case in a similar lawsuit filed there, and said that the government, this is the Department of Agriculture that administers this program, must, both of these judges ruling, they must by Monday explain how they're going to use this money and how quickly they're going to get it out, etc. I don't know what the or else is on that, but they need to have something in place by Monday. Now, it's the Associated Press story says it takes about a week or two to load people's SNAP cards. They could probably do that more quickly, but that would be one thing that could cause problems. It could bring in the private help that you were talking about, Tim. It's
all related to the economy, Mike. It's all related to the shutdown. And if we take a step back and think about the bigger economic effects of the shutdown on the economy, Jan Van Eck, we've spoken to him twice in the last month, and he hasn't changed his tune about it. He doesn't think that the shutdown will affect the stock market, but not necessarily the same question about what it does to the economy. We've talked to you in the past about this, Mike. What are your thoughts on the shutdown, the daily numbers that are associated, with the government being shut down and its overall economic effects now that it is over a month long.
And it is something Jay Powell addressed, right, in terms of the shutdown a little bit in that
well,
Fed meeting.
I mean, obviously there is the issue of the data that the Fed and others are not getting on the economy, but the overall economy, studies in the past have suggested that it would be between 0.1% and 0.2% per week that the government is shut down that would subtract from GDP in that month or that quarter. This is on the going to be on the high end because no appropriations bills were passed. Therefore, all of the people who would be furloughed were furloughed. The last time in 2019, we didn't have everybody furloughed. So that will subtract. Now, the issue is always how quickly this ends. And then a lot of the money that wasn't spent will be spent, which trims the loss overall. You have a loss of efficiency and a loss of things that may not get spent. Federal contractors, for example, essentially freelancers, they don't get paid and they don't get back pay. So that money is gone and the spending that they would have done is gone. But federal workers will get their lump sum repayments and then they'll go out and they'll pay their mortgages and pay their credit cards and things like that. So we won't lose all of it. It is a hit to the economy, but if you go back a couple of years afterwards and you look, it's really hard to find in the overall statistics. It's maybe more damaging to confidence than anything else.
Well, the banks are thinking about it. I open up my credit card app and it says at the top, if you're affected by the government shutdown, we can help. Click here.
Well, I mean, what the banks and everybody are doing is they don't want your credit report to be ruined, your credit to be ruined because, you know, you're showing up for work every day and the government says you can't come in the door. Yeah,
that's an interesting point. Wow, banks can be helpful. I'm just saying. No,
She's
I know.
Fired today.
I know. I know they can be helpful. Michael McKee, thank you so much. Bloomberg TV and Radio International Economics and Policy Correspondent. Nathan Dean, we want to go back to you. There was a busy week in Washington. What is top of mind? We talked about the government shutdown. I mean, that to me speaks of major dysfunction. I mean, how is Washington looking at this past week with the president overseas, a U.S.-China agreement? I'm putting parentheses around that, which they're going to talk about again in a year. So it just, I don't know, is this a win this week or doesn't sound like one?
I think it's a win from the status quo. And I think that's what markets really want here is clarity. And obviously this agreement with China says that 1 year from now, we're going to come back. And look, President Trump, the way he operates, we could be back in a point where additional tariffs go up in a few weeks. You know, that's just what the play that comes from the White House here. But at least it gives us a little bit of clarity of what at least things are going to go forward. And we're not faced with that 100% tariff that would potentially go in, you know, starting tomorrow. So I think, you know, markets are going to look at this week and they're going to say, OK, we saw what happened here in Asia. Let's go back to D.C. Let's go back to politics here and let's see what happens. But I would also say is that even though the government is shut down, deregulation is still moving forward. I mean, if you think about the pillars of how President Trump is operating, executive orders, legislation, and deregulation to a certain extent is still happening. There's a lot of deregulation that's happening at the Federal Reserve. We had a couple of proposals come out just last week about stress tests. So even though the government is still shut down, ultimately, this is what we tell our clients, is that when you look at how President Trump is implementing policy, it's a delay, but nothing has been derailed by this government shutdown.
Halloween costume. What are you doing tonight, Nathan? Just quickly.
Very tired dad going out there, just dressed up as a, just very tired dad.
Hey, you know what? Not everybody's too cool to be seen with Nathan Dean trick-or-treating, okay?
Yeah.
Come on. That's a little deep tease about your weekly newsletter. Everybody's got to subscribe to it. It comes on Fridays. Nathan always shares some personal stuff. But have fun trick-or-treating with the whole family tonight, Nathan.
Thank you.
All right, take care. Have a good weekend. All right, that, of course, is our Nathan Dean, as we said, Bloomberg Intelligence Senior Policy Analyst. Hey, folks, it's been a really big week. So much going on. We're going to go around the big tech universe from Netflix and its interest in Warner Brothers Discovery to those Mag 7 earnings with the one and only Needham's Laura Martin. She's with us right here on Bloomberg Businessweek Daily. This is Bloomberg.
It's 2:21 on Wall Street. We do check markets all day long here at Bloomberg. Two federal judges have ruled nearly simultaneously that President Trump's administration must continue to fund SNAP. That is the nation's biggest food aid program, using contingency funds during the government shutdown. Now, these rulings do come a day before the Department of Agriculture planned to freeze payments to the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, SNAP, because it said it could no longer keep funding it due to the shutdown. Stocks now higher across the board. The Dow, the S&P, NASDAQ all advancing. 19-point advance for the S&P. We've got under 2 hours to go until we wrap up the trading month of October. S&P right now at 68.41, up 0.3%. The Dow back in the green, up 21, up just about 0.1%. NASDAQ up 163, up 0.7%. The Mag 7 index holding on to a gain of 1.4%. Apple and Amazon, both members, both higher. 10-year 4.08%, the 2-year 3.60%. Gold down $16 the ounce at $4,007. That is a drop of 0.4%. While West Texas Intermediate crude oil $60.90 a barrel, up by about 0.5%. Coinbase global shares up 6.8% after the largest U.S. crypto exchange reported revenue that exceeded Wall Street's third quarter estimates. And the cybersecurity firm Cloudflare surged to a record after posting better than expected sales numbers that top quarterly and annual estimates. The ticker on Cloudflare is NET, and the stock surging now by 12.1%. Recapping, Apple right now up 0.2%. Amazon up by 11%. I'm Charlie Pellet. That is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
All right, Charlie, thank you so much. Well, Netflix is actively exploring a bid for Warner Brothers Discovery studio and streaming business, that at least according to Reuters, citing people with knowledge of the matter. Now, remember, Bloomberg News reported earlier that Netflix and Comcast are weighing bids for parts of the company. Comcast execs discussed their M&A strategy on an earnings call earlier in the week. Meantime, we are also, focused on those Mag 7. Amazon shares, Tim, are soaring in a big way today.
With more and a look at the big tech earnings week that was for Apple, Meta, Alphabet, and Amazon. Back with us is Laura Martin. She's Senior Entertainment and Internet Analyst at Needham Co. She covers the media, entertainment, the worlds of internet as well, which, as we know, have become so intertwined. She joins us from Los Angeles.
Laura, great to have you back. Hello, hello, hello. We got to start with Netflix and Warner Brothers. We've talked with you before. We did it at Bloomberg Screen Time out on the West Coast, and it was just after Netflix co-CEO Greg Peters was like, we're not interested in Warner Brothers. You said that even though Netflix doesn't do big acquisitions, you did note that they must buy established IP, intellectual property, and you talked about this. So do you feel like there's momentum here that Netflix is kind of moving towards a deal?
I think that it's a smart move for them to look at the books of Warner. They lose nothing by doing the due diligence and looking at Warner's business model. I think Wall Street would be supportive of Netflix using its very valuable equity to buy the studios. I do not think Wall Street would be amused if they tried to buy the linear TV networks. And I think that, I think there's a disagreement within Netflix. You're right that when I last saw you, Greg Peters was like, hard no, we don't want to look at these assets. Ted Sarando's body language on his earnings call was much more open, probably because he's the content guy. And Warner Brothers has some of the best IP and the deepest library of any studio. And once you own the IP, you never have to pay to rent it again. So it's really hard to keep creating brand new IP. You may as well get some that has an installed base of fandom from the last 50 years, and Warner Brothers has some of the most, next to the Walt Disney Company.
So should Netflix do it?
I think it depends on price. Because it is contentious within Wall Street, it depends on price. And I get the sense that Warner Brothers really wants to sell dear because they have this idea that if they split in half, they're going to get $26, $27 a share of total value. I don't believe that. But if they believe that, then that means that they're going to try to overcharge Netflix. And I don't know that Netflix would be overpay for the studio assets here.
Who else? I mean, we've talked about Comcast. I mean, who else could be, a really big competitor here for Warner Brothers?
So I think, my opinion is the way this plays out is everybody looks at the books. Everybody gets the inside scoop on what's happening at Warner Brothers, because why not? You're competing against them. And then the price, and then they try to buy a piece, like Comcast tries to buy linear or Netflix tries to buy. And I'm not sure they are regulatably approvable, except for Larry Ellison, who is Donald Trump's good friend. So I think all of this is in the end, a way to get Larry Ellison, David Ellison, to get their price up to match whoever else is bidding. But I think Ellison's are the only ones that can get this through regulatory, in my opinion.
What ends up happening to the linear stuff over at Warner Brothers?
Well, Ellison
Discovery?
has said he's willing to buy the whole thing. So that solves that. They just sell the whole thing because he can get regulatory approval.
Oh, okay.
God, it's fascinating.
I think we'll have Laura back on before this. And still, like, our first question will be a month from now about this potential deal.
I know. Is there any pressure to get this thing done sooner rather than later?
No, I mean, the CEO Zaslav is trying to make pressure because he's saying, oh, in April, we're going to split it in 2 pieces. But it's an arbitrary deadline. He can push that off to June or September. You know, I don't agree that the 2 pieces spun off alone will be worth 26 or 27. But that's his stalking horse, is this artificial timing deadline he set.
So let's say Netflix doesn't get this. And I promise we're going to ask you about more stuff, Laura. But let's say Netflix doesn't get assets from Warner Brothers. What would be its next move in content IP? What should it do?
So what I think it's doing, interesting things with advertising, interesting things with video games. It's going into short form, which is smart. It's backing creators, which is smart, influencers. It's moving into the YouTube businesses and like socially connected people. It's doing physical. You saw it's doing physical around K-pop. It's #1 film of all time. Physical outlets, the way Disney does, but they're doing pop-ups, a much smaller, much smaller vision than the Disney vision of theme parks. So they're doing a lot of things that are trying to maximize revenue from their IP. I would like to see them buy a library, but I don't want to see them overpay for a library.
Okay, last one on Netflix. Announcing yesterday a 10-for-1 stock split. The split-adjusted basis trade is expected to begin on November 17th. Shares up 2.7% as we speak. I'm like a big, hey, this doesn't change the fundamentals of the stock, so I have a hard time ever understanding.
It.
Yeah, I do. Whenever a company does a stock split like this. Your thoughts on the stock split? Do you care?
No, super smart. This is a retail company, and people should be able to give. You know, when I was a kid at 5 years old, my grandmother always gave me 5 shares of the Walt Disney Company, which we should deliver in a frame, which are still on my walls, every birthday for 5 years till I was 10 years old and wanted a different thing, dresses or something. So they should be doing that with Netflix shares. And this should be accessible to the public that wants to be supportive in the capital markets on a retail investors of the fact they love Stranger Things. It's another way to sort of give a feedback loop to Netflix about the good work they're doing. So I'm very supportive.
All right, great stuff. Hey, let's talk Mag 7. Amazon, Alphabet, Apple, Meta. What a dump this week. Investors reacted differently to the AI spend at different companies. Pick your company that you think was most interesting this week.
Okay. So the 2 most interesting were Amazon and Meta, because one's up 12%, the other one's down 12%. In total, these companies each raised their capital spending guidance for this year by $7 billion. Together, the Mag 7 will now spend $400 billion on generative AI infrastructure, going up to $500 billion next year, $500 billion, in a revenue stream that isn't determined yet. So that is a big headline here. CapEx spending continues to, rotate up. Amazon, really spectacular numbers. Really, Amazon is trading on AWS. Like, you may think it's an e-commerce company, but capital markets are telling you AWS is what it trades on. They've reported 20% revenue growth at AWS, which is the highest in, I think, 3 years, 300 basis points faster than last quarter, so accelerating. It did $33 billion of revenue out of 105 total that revenue for the quarter at a 30% margin. Remember, e-commerce has a 2% margin. So think about what's happening to returns on capital. And, okay, so you're going to say, oh, but they're spending all this CapEx, so it's unclear. But what's great about Amazon is everything they're building for generative AI, they are using internally to lay off 14,000 people. So they're improving their operating efficiency, and they're driving revenue growth in all of their businesses, and they're going to sell. They are the only one not capacity constrained, because 4 years ago, since 2022, they have doubled their power capacity, which is the gating factor to data infrastructure, and they created Trainium chips, which are their like proprietary, what they call custom silicon. So they don't have a capacity problem. Whereas we hear from Microsoft and Llama over at Meta and Alphabet, they're all capacity constrained. That's silly. Amazon's running a better business. Good for them. Go Amazon. So they are not capacity constrained, and they have differentiation by these Trainium chips. Let's move to Meta. Meta, the opposite. They're like, we're going to take all this money. They spent $19 billion of CapEx in the quarter, which left them only $10 billion of free cash flow in the quarter, which means next quarter, when they spend more, they're going to go into negative cash flow, which means they're going to be borrowing money from capital markets. And when he tells you about what his goal is for this huge capital spending that's going to drive leverage, adding financial leverage to his income, his balance sheet, he's saying, we're going into the super intelligence business, which is going to benefit the world. And it's going to be, some experts see 3 to 5 years from now, some say 7, and some say after that. To which I say, too much value leakage. Yeah. Wall Street investors should not be in the business of buying Meta shares to benefit the world. The Pope does that. There are people who have a seat that does that. No, buy Alphabet. Everything they do is about capturing the value of the CapEx that they're building, both for themselves and leasing it to third parties at increasingly high margins. So I don't like the value leakage. I don't want to save the world through a corporate investment. Get out of Meta, move into Alphabet, move into Amazon, and Apple's just not in the game.
Laura,
they doubled their CapEx.
We only have 10 seconds left, but if Amazon's market cap is $2.65 trillion, excuse me. You say that's all AWS is what it's traded on. What portion of that is the value of AWS? Very quickly.
I would say this is what it trades on, but I'd say half of the value of this company is now based on AWS outlook.
That's incredible.
Laura Martin, we could talk to
Andy Jassy is the CEO.
I know. We could talk to her forever. Have a great weekend, and I know we will talk with you soon. Amazing. Laura Martin, Senior Entertainment and Internet Analyst at Needham Co. Hey, as we head to a break, we do want to mention something while we're talking about media and the content space. Bloomberg's original investigation, Can't Look Away, the case against social media, now available on Bloomberg platforms. It exposes the real-world consequences of harmful algorithms. Here's a little sneak peek.
These companies have been gaslighting us for years.
This is all about money.
The purpose of all commercial ventures is to create a demand.
Our children are the casualties.
We need to take back the power from these companies.
They created a dangerous situation and then manipulated these kids.
They know the levels of addiction, sexual abuse. They know the levels of suicide. They're not showing our kids what they want to see. They're showing you what they can't look away from.
All right, that again is Can't Look Away, the case against social media, Bloomberg's original investigation. It is based on the original investigative reporting from our own Olivia Carville. It's now available on Bloomberg platforms. You can catch it Saturday, 1 o'clock to 2:30 p.m. and 9 to 10:30 p.m. Wall Street times. All right, coming up after the break, we're going to switch gears. We're going to talk a little bit about Venezuela, Tim.
Yeah, from the latest Nobel Peace Prize recipient and political opposition leader to Venezuelan President Maduro, amid what feels like rising tensions between the U.S. and the South American country. That when Bloomberg Businessweek Daily continues.
It's 2:40 on Wall Street. We do check markets all day long here at Bloomberg. We do have the S&P 500 index advancing now. The Dow, the S&P, NASDAQ all solidly in the green. Right to the numbers with the S&P 500 index climbing now by 22 points, well off session lows. 68.45 where we stand. We have got the S&P up now by just about 0.3%. Dow Industrials up 45 for the Dow. That is a gain there of just about 0.1%. NASDAQ up 165. NASDAQ higher now by 0.7%. The Russell 2000 index of small cap shares is advancing by 0.3%, and our Mag 7 index up by 1.3%. Apple and Amazon both a member of the index, with Apple up now by 0.1%. Amazon ripping higher by 11.1%. Yield on the 10-year 4.09%, with that 2-year yielding 3.60%, while gold down $20 the ounce, holding above 4,000 as we wrap up October. Right now, the precious metal is down 0.5% at $4,004. Crude, West Texas Intermediate, $61.02 a barrel, up 0.7%. And Bitcoin now above 109,500, up by 1.9%. As we were discussing with Laura Martin moments ago, Netflix said to be actively exploring a bid for Warner Brothers Discovery's studio and streaming businesses. Now, that's according to Reuters citing sources. Warner Brothers Discovery up by 4%. Netflix, which also announced that 10-for-1 split, up by 2.7%. For on-demand news 24 hours a day, subscribe to Bloomberg News Now wherever you get your podcasts. I'm Charlie Pelleton. That is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
All right, Charlie, thank you so much. Carol Massar along with Tim Stenovec live here on Bloomberg Businessweek Daily. While speaking to reporters earlier on Air Force One, President Trump says no when asked whether he is considering strikes in Venezuela. He also said no when asked whether he's made a decision on the matter. So it sounds like
I think
not committing to anything.
I was going to say keeping the options open, despite the two no's.
Yeah, and this is after we saw earlier Venezuelan dollar bonds up across the curve after reports of the U.S. potentially increasing military pressure on the oil-producing nation. Oil, too, moved slightly higher, although it did drop back. And then we know the further backdrop, is that the U.S. has been conducting attacks on alleged drug-running boats in the Caribbean Sea and the Eastern Pacific, and the administration has announced it is sending, Tim, a naval strike group to Latin America.
That's just our backdrop on this Friday afternoon. And we welcome journalist and author Mishal Husain. She's the host of the Mishal Husain Show, a new podcast from Bloomberg Weekend. She's also the author of Broken Threads, My Family from Empire to Independence, among others. It's good to have you here. How are you?
Very good to be with you. Hello, Tim. Hello, Carol.
Well, you had a very timely guest on your program. You sat down with Corina Machado just 3 weeks after she won the Nobel Peace Prize. And in my understanding, she's in hiding. You did this interview with her from hiding.
Yes, it's a remote interview. She has been giving some interviews since she got the Nobel Peace Prize 3 weeks ago. And from her point of view, that is a very welcome international spotlight on the issue of Venezuela, which had really receded from international attention in many ways since the election that Nicolas Maduro is widely understood to have stolen from Maria Corina Machado and fellow opposition figures 15 months ago. So the Nobel Peace Prize put the spotlight back on it. And of course, then, since the strikes on the boats in the Caribbean that the Trump administration says are carrying drugs, since those began 2 months ago, and now we have this massive U.S. military buildup in the Caribbean, the biggest since 1989. So this is perhaps a particularly timely interview because we dropped the episode this morning just as this reporting started to emerge on whether land strikes will be next.
And she specifically address the amping up of actions on Venezuela. Let's actually play a little snippet of it, and then we'll come back to you. This, again, is Maria Corina Machado, a Venezuelan opposition leader and 2025 Nobel Peace Prize laureate.
I believe that the increase in pressure and the escalation that's taking place is the only way to force Maduro to understand that it's time to go. And those that still support him, which are not very few at this moment, the top brass of the military, financial enablers, front men that are making huge, obscene fortunes with the hunger of our people, better understand that, time is running off. And I believe that this escalation is the last opportunity for those that still support Maduro to understand that they need to put aside, take all support away from him and Maduro himself to understand that this is the last chance to truly facilitate a peaceful and orderly transition, which is what we want.
That's Maria Corina Machado, Venezuelan opposition leader and 2025 Nobel Peace Prize laureate on the Mishal Husain Show. Mishal here with us right now. The idea of Maduro actually having very little support among the top brass, is that... Did she provide evidence?
You kind of made a face.
Yeah, she doesn't back that up. And this has been quite a frequent refrain. And I can understand why she is putting it that way, painting the regime as on the brink of collapse. But elsewhere in the interview, she says 80% of the military are now against him. We have no idea if that could be true or not. But this answer she gives about escalation is the only way for Maduro to essentially see that the writing is on the wall. This was her answer when I put this point about land strikes being next, and does she support the idea of strikes on the territory of Venezuela, when I put that question directly to her. I think it's clear that she supports the US military escalation in the region. She thinks that this is very valuable pressure. She doesn't go as far as to say, I want a military intervention, but she dreams of a different Venezuela, and perhaps she feels that with the Trump administration's attitude and attention in the last couple of months, she and people who feel that way are closer than ever before to that goal.
How, I think about South America as a whole and how U.S. actions in Venezuela would be perceived across the region.
Yeah. I mean, of course, there's a long and very troubled history.
Exactly.
Over a century of U.S. military intervention in these countries. She, in so many ways, she echoes the language of the Trump administration when she's talking not only about her country, but the region. Not only narco-terrorism, she uses the exact phrase that administration figures do, but when she says words to the effect that America's stability and security depends on the Western Hemisphere. This is an echo of the Monroe Doctrine and the fact that this whole region is within America's purview, and that its security is all linked. So she is portraying her country in the United States and others in the region as part of a continuum.
I'm curious, too, though, after she got the Nobel Peace Prize, I mean, of course, President Trump was hoping to get it. What is the communication between the two, or with the Trump administration?
Well, she certainly had that call straight after and she dedicated her prize partly to him.
Right.
And I'm sure she was trying to keep him on side and think, this is a moment where the US is engaged in my country. I don't want this moment to be the one that drives the president away. I asked her particularly about her communications with the administration and with Secretary Rubio. She said, of course, I've been in touch with him and my team is in touch with his team. The extent of those day-to-day communications, she wouldn't say. But I also asked, what are you doing, right? What are you doing within the country now? And she said, are you going to call people out on the streets? And she said, people will come out when the moment is right. So I think, in a sense, from her perspective, there's everything to play for in these days.
I'm not going to ask you to make a prediction, but you might be speaking to the next leader of the country.
Well, she certainly would be the president of Venezuela today had Maduro not blocked her from standing. And then, as the opposition has very credibly put forward their evidence that they won that election, had he not stolen the election from them. So she said, of course, I'm interested in becoming president, but technically, if Maduro was to fall, then Edmundo Gonzalez, who was elected the president 15 months ago, would be the person in place. But she's a very brave person. There's no doubt about it. She is enduring isolation and separation from family members who are in exile. She is living in hiding. She cannot leave. I don't even know if it's her home. Wherever she is, she cannot be seen outside because of the risk of arrest. And she was briefly detained when she appeared in public 9 months ago.
Does she stay in the country, just very briefly?
She is in Venezuela. That is our understanding. She is in Venezuela. Just most other opposition figures are in exile. But yes, she continues to bear considerable risk.
Mishal, thank you so much. Really appreciate it. Mishal Husain, the host of the Mishal Husain Show, a new podcast from Bloomberg Weekend. That full interview with Maria Corina Machado, it is available now, and you can check out it. It's from the Bloomberg Weekend team. It is on the Bloomberg terminal, Bloomberg.com, as well as on YouTube, Spotify, or anywhere you get your podcasts. All right, folks. We are heading and getting close to the last hour of trading here on Wall Street. When we come back, an update on the trade on this Friday, and we'll also get a look at some of the stocks on the move in a week where there was so much coming at investors, and yet the S&P on track for another monthly gain. You are listening and watching Bloomberg Businessweek Daily. We'll be right back.
You're listening to Bloomberg Businessweek Daily with Carol Massar and Tim Stenovec on Bloomberg Radio and Television.
All right, everybody, we're almost into the last hour of trading here at Bloomberg, and bouncing around here. We're off our worst and best levels of the session. So what does that mean? S&P 500 just up a hair, up about 1/4 percentage point. NASDAQ 100 a gain of about 0.5%. But I do believe we are on track, though, for another month of gains. Let me pull it up on the Bloomberg, because sometimes it takes a moment. Up about 2.25% here for the month overall. So it's definitely been a bullish tone here in the month of October. If so, it would be the longest streak of monthly gains since 2021.
Wow.
Back-to-back gains for the S&P.
So we'll find out in
1, 2, 3, 4, 6 months of gains.
She counted the old-fashioned way.
Got my abacus out.
I bet there's a way we can do that.
I've gotten it out a lot of times this week.
I'm Tim Stenovec along with Carol Massar. Let's take a look at some stocks on the move today. With us is Bloomberg television markets correspondent Norah Mulinda. Norah, you're watching some big ones today.
So many tech stocks really in focus this entire week, but we're looking at shares of Apple today. That's ticker AAPL. And they are seeing them rallying earlier, but then pairing into the red. But we're now about unchanged here, just above flat. But this is after the company reported a strong holiday outlook, but they did talk about a sales decline in China. So that has definitely been weighing here on the stock, as a lot of the street just really tries to grapple with what is going on here in the earnings and parsing it piece by piece here. But I mean, they were saying that a lot of the newer iPhones is what actually lifted some of the metrics here.
It
so
bounced around big time in the aftermarket, but it like sold after earnings came out and then it bounced back.
Yeah, there were some comments,
all over
the
map.
CFO made, or that Apple was putting out essentially to different publications that talked about, hey, actually, we are going to see some growth this quarter. And here's how much.
But today we're not so impressed.
Yeah, it doesn't seem to be too impressed. Now, into the red? We're bopping around, really bouncing all over the map right now, as people really just try to get an idea of what they feel about it.
I was just looking at what it's done for the week overall. I'm just curious. Let's pull it up. I know. I'm just kind of in that mood. 3.25% higher.
Yeah. Well, there you go.
Okay.
Long term.
Long term.
Just saying. All right.
Let's
get to another Mag 7, Amazon.
Okay, this has definitely been an outperformer here among all the Mag 7 stocks. Of course, this has really been one of the biggest gainers in the S&P 500 as well. Ticker AMZN. We're seeing shares rallying for double-digit gains. Earlier up for the highest level on record. Really just a stellar day for the company here. So really people have been looking a lot in the cloud segment here. Of course, AWS really in focus, a $33 billion revenue that was reported here. The revenue is up 20% higher than what we saw last year. So you really are seeing the street really just feeling a little bit more comfortable or a little bit less stressed out about fears of an AI bubble, at least in particular for this company here.
For Amazon?
Yeah, for Amazon. I mean, if you think about it versus Meta, what we just got yesterday, everyone was thinking about.
Isn't it? That's why it was so wacky, that AI spend. We just talked to, we've talked with a lot of folks, about and the perception and how investors, reacted. Not the same for all the companies.
They're just picking at each of them.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, also on your radar today is Netflix, a stock that's firmly in the green.
Firmly in the green, and this is after the company announced a 10-for-1 stock split.
All right, I'm going to talk about this in just a second.
Here he goes again.
Okay. I'm going to get on my high horse.
All right, Tim. I can't wait to hear. But I mean, of course, this is a stock where each share is more than $1,000. It's been quite expensive, lofty here. But I mean, the company is essentially just going to be making a bit more affordable for its employees, stock options. And of course, the bid here that we do know and focus has really been about Netflix exploring a bid for Warner Brothers Studio, Warner Brothers Discovery. So that's also been something that the street has really been digesting here. We're looking at shares up about 3% so far, but 25% on the year.
Okay.
Here we go.
Yeah, please.
I didn't have time to talk about this with Laura Martin when we interviewed her. If you missed, I didn't have time to give my 2 cents, okay?
Well, we're listening.
But what did she say?
She likes it. She said it makes it more accessible.
Okay.
But my response to that, if I had time, and now I do, would have been, it's already very accessible on retail trading platforms such as Robinhood.
Okay.
In fact, when I was talking about this yesterday after they announced this, and I said there's no fundamental change to the stock with a stock split, I got a text message from somebody listening to our show who said, I just bought $20 of Amazon using Robinhood, and it doesn't matter. The share price doesn't matter because these days you can buy fractional shares of stock. You can say, I want $50 of Apple.
How many people buy fractional owners?
I don't have the answer to that.
Retail, maybe.
Do they?
But in retail,
I'm not sure.
Instead of just cobbling together, $564 for said stock, put $50 toward a stock.
Yeah, well,
it's a lot easier.
We need some more viewers to weigh in. I'm curious anecdotally.
And I always, whenever I talk about this, I get pushback, for the option stuff, and look, there's, and also for inclusion in certain indices, it's price is important, but fundamentally nothing changes about the stock. But Laura Martin liked it.
She did.
Okay.
Yeah. Are you done?
I'm done.
All right, good stuff. So
come at me, everybody.
So is Norah Mulinda, Bloomberg TV markets correspondent with Stock Movers. Check out our Stock Movers podcast, 5-minute episodes of the biggest winners and losers in the stock market. You can find it on Apple, Spotify, or anywhere you get your podcasts. We're headed into our last 2 hours on this week.
Spooky.
Ooh. Yeah, I don't know. It's been so much coming out of investors, and yet we're looking at some gains for the week overall. So what an interesting bunch of stuff coming at us.
We got a great couple of hours coming up on Bloomberg Businessweek Daily. Carol's going to decide what her Halloween costume is going to be.
I'm wearing it.
She's wearing it. Also, Amazon shares soaring.
TV
the CEO
radio
of Berkshire
anchor.
Hathaway and Brooks Running is going to be with us. That's next.